The silence was heavier than the blizzard had been. It pressed down on the 4 inhabitants of the makeshift snow shelter, not with the random fury of wind and snow, but with the calculated infinite pressure of the Arctic wilderness. The air inside the dome, filtered by snow walls, held a perpetual luminous blue-gray tint. It was the color of frozen hope, the exact shade where exhaustion met the terror of terminal scarcity. They were alive. That much was a victory. But the cost was crippling. The blizzard had not just been a weather event. It was a thief that raided their supplies, scattered their woodpile, and consumed their finite reserves of emotional unity and physical energy. Now, 4 exhausted people, Caleb, the pragmatic leader, Diana, the logical scientist, Alex, the stoic veteran nursing an injured shoulder, and Brenda, the watchful analyst, faced the true enemy: internal collapse. The fight for life had devolved into a silent, internal triage of organ function. Caleb's hands, cracked and stained with soot, trembled slightly as he retrieved the metal survival box. This was the moment of reckoning. The box contained the sum total of their mobile wealth. He carefully extracted the contents: 1 small, desiccated pouch of rabbit jerky, a coil of fishing line with 3 small hooks, and a single high-quality survival knife. He placed the pouch of jerky on the snow-packed floor. It looked pathetic, barely enough to fill a palm. "This," Caleb murmured, his voice gritty from dehydration, "is all the protein left." Diana, the scientist, immediately performed the mental calculation. "At most 200 calories total," she whispered. "If we divide that 4 ways, it's 50 calories each, not even enough to sustain a minute of serious shivering." Caleb frowned. "I estimated a little more. Let's assume 150 calories each." The correction was moot. Whether 50 or 150, it was a negligible fraction of the thousands of calories they needed just to stay alive. The calories weren't sustenance, they were a psychological placebo, a momentary pause in the body's self-cannibalization. Caleb picked up the survival knife, the blade reflecting the cold blue light. He sliced the jerky into 4 precise, paper-thin pieces. The sound of the dry meat cracking under the steel was deafening in the silence. Each survivor received their portion. No one spoke. The act of eating became a meditation on scarcity. Diana, despite her scientific detachment, was the first to succumb. She chewed her piece with excruciating slowness, savoring the salty protein, but her eyes drifted back to Caleb's hand, where a few minuscule shards of dried meat had splintered off. As Caleb lowered his hand, exhausted, Diana's own hand darted out. She delicately swept the crumbs from Caleb's palm and into her own, bringing her fingers to her lips and licking the remnants clean. It was a small, humiliating act, seen only by Brenda. The intellectual, the epitome of civilized control, reduced to licking crumbs like a foraging animal. It was a clear indicator of their psychological descent. The social contract had cracked under the pressure of caloric deficit. Brenda felt a cold certainty. They are all just stomachs. They pretend at morality, but when the fat reserves run out, the primal lizard brain takes over. The true crisis, however, arrived not with the food, but with the tools. The knife and the fishing kit. Both represented a chance at future calories, but both required an exponential expenditure of precious energy now. Caleb gestured toward the knife. "Alex, you take the knife," he instructed. "You're the most experienced with defense and bushcraft." Alex, slumped against the snow wall, his hand gripping his injured right shoulder, simply shook his head. "I cannot. My shoulder is unstable. The risk of dropping it is too high. You should take it." Caleb bristled, fatigue amplifying his suspicion of Alex, who had always been an aloof operator. "I'm not as fast as you," Caleb shot back, "and you know that blade is essential for defense against potential predators or against internal problems. I'm giving it to you because you are the strongest." This was Caleb's trap. He was testing Alex's motives. If Alex was a self-serving lone wolf, he would jump at the chance to possess the ultimate weapon. Alex leaned forward, ignoring the flare of pain in his shoulder. "My strength is irrelevant if I cannot wield it properly," he stated, his tone flat. "Furthermore, the knife is more valuable as a tool for fire prep, shaving feather sticks, splitting tinder, than as a weapon. Its primary purpose now is thermodynamics, not defense. This calculated refusal was a classic tactical maneuver. By publicly rejecting the most desired asset, Alex minimized Caleb's suspicion and shifted the burden of responsibility back onto the leader. He was trading the physical safety of the knife for the psychological safety of demonstrated selflessness. The debate stalled on a razor's edge. If Caleb took the knife, he looked greedy. If he forced Alex to take it, he risked giving a potentially hostile element a lethal advantage. The psychological warfare was consuming more energy than a 10-mile hike. "Stop," Brenda commanded. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the emotional fog. "You are wasting breath arguing about trust. Trust is a non-renewable resource that we ran out of 2 days ago." She moved with sudden, efficient motion, kicking the knife slightly into a shadowed corner. She placed herself between the two men. "Caleb, your question about Alex's motive is irrelevant. His motive is survival. Your motive is survival. Diana's is survival. Mine is survival. In this environment, any action that maximizes individual probability of survival also, by necessity, maximizes the group's efficiency. Anything else is sentimental delusion." Brenda's philosophy was rational egoism distilled to its most brutal form. An individual must act to achieve maximum personal gain. But in this specific context, personal gain was inextricably linked to the group's immediate functioning status. She picked up the fishing kit. Fishing required leaving the shelter, locating non-frozen water, and sitting motionless in the cold. A deadly risk. "We are not sharing," Brenda declared, her eyes sweeping over the group. "We are segmenting tasks based on competence and immediate cost." She laid out her plan with chilling clarity. Alex would keep the knife, but his job was now the low-energy task of making feather sticks for fire prep. A job demanding precision, not brute force. Brenda would take the fishing kit. As she had the lowest muscle mass, she was most susceptible to hypothermia, giving her the greatest incentive to secure a high-calorie resource quickly. Diana, the most composed, would manage their navigation and the radio. And Caleb, his task was now pure logistics, managing schedules, watch rotations, and the final decision to move. He was the operational clock. Brenda didn't wait for a response. She thrust the fishing kit into her pocket, signaling the end of the debate. She had stripped the assets of their moral and emotional symbolism, turning them into mere extensions of specialized labor. Caleb stared at Brenda. Her solution was monstrously logical. It was efficient, cold, and entirely devoid of the humanistic ideals he had been clinging to. He realized his moral struggle had been a luxury of energy he could no longer afford. He had been fighting for the idea of a cooperative team, while Brenda had been fighting for the reality of a functioning machine. He nodded once. "Morality is a burden only the well-fed can afford to carry. We are no longer friends or colleagues. We are 4 interdependent components of a single desperate organism." Alex, who had watched the exchange with detached focus, nodded his own cold acknowledgement. The pressure was off. He had been assigned a task that matched his physical limitations and was highly visible, satisfying the need for accountability. Diana, still tasting phantom crumbs on her fingers, accepted her role as the cognitive anchor without argument. Her brain, now functioning with ruthless efficiency, confirmed Brenda's assessment, offered the highest probability of group survival. The atmosphere in the quinzhee shifted immediately. The emotional tension was replaced by a focused, terrifying energy. They began their tasks in a silence that was functional, not fearful. Alex carefully scraped wood from frozen kindling. Brenda tested the tensile strength of the fishing line. As Caleb crawled to the entrance to assess the sky, he felt the distinct shift in his own identity. He was no longer a leader inspiring hope. He was a ruthless manager of human capital, making decisions based on thermodynamic efficiency and the brutal tenets of psychological calculus. The world outside remained vast, white, and deadly. But for the first time since the storm, their internal mechanisms, stripped bare of sentimentality, were working in a coordinated, merciless rhythm. They had survived the blizzard, but they had sacrificed their humanity to the cold acceptance of the division. The true journey, fueled by rational egoism and minimal calories, was about to begin.